So that's basically what we are going to talk about today. Different types of research questions, which type of research question works best for my own research, and a couple of exercises that help us now in this session and later you in your whole thesis and research process in crafting, developing, improving your research questions. So what is a research question? I mean, I don't get into the details of repeating the literature. First, it should be actually a question. Sometimes you see phrases that are not exactly phrased as questions. It is interesting to know how agile, it is interesting to know the way in which managers phrase it into a question. Because the first choice that you choose a type of, literally a type of question, is it what, why, how, when, under which conditions, force you to actually think about many question options. It should be clear. If I read your research question, I shouldn't actually be stopped to just wonder, what do you mean by this? What is that? We have a very simple test here. We call it grandma test. If you give your research question to your grandma, who hopefully doesn't have any DBI certificate or something like that, she should be able to understand what you are talking about. It should be specific and focused. The focus that you got in your topic, don't lose it. Make it even more focused when you write your research question. It should be interesting. It shouldn't be obvious or, kind of potato question. I mean, if I ask, how do large organizations adopt, expensive technologies? You would say, well, they have money, they buy it. It's not such a big surprise. But if I ask, how do large companies with a lot of experience in inter-organizational collaboration keep failing in the new collaborations, then you say, oh, that seems interesting. Because the expectation is the other way, that they succeed. But now we see the question is the other way. And this is the last but the most important thing in terms of having a research question. It should be theoretically informed. The other way to put it, if I read your research question, it should smell your theory or your theoretical perspective, your lens. And there, I have this slide for you. There are three different things. Two of them are not necessarily a research question, but very often when you try to write your research question, you start from one of the other two, and hopefully then you can actually improve it and make it into a research question. The first thing that is a very common thing that you put is called a practical question. A question that is about a particular problem, a particular issue for a practitioner. It can be specific, it can be somehow generic. What are the most effective ways of aligning enterprise architecture with the business strategy? It's a practical question. Fine, you start with that because when you start thinking about the topic, it should be relevant for practice. No problem. But that's not necessarily a research question. The second thing, which is maybe somehow closer to the research question, but it's not yet a research question, is called empirical question. If you show your research question to your supervisor and he or she says that, well, that sounds an interesting empirical question, this is the empirical question. Empirical question is about understanding the state of a fact, finding an empirical fact. It can be generic, it can be specific. If we want to know what are the different alignment techniques that Dutch banks use for aligning their enterprise architecture with their business strategy, it's good as a question when you start your methods, when you want to collect your data, when you want to start writing your interview protocol, when you want to think about the questions in your questionnaire. But it's still not a research question. Research question needs to smell the theory, or at least exploring some theorization. For instance, how does inter-team learning impact the process of aligning enterprise architecture with the business strategy? So if you read this, you can smell a theory or a couple of theories here. Team learning, at least that's the one I had in mind. So you see the difference between the three. But if doesn't need to have any unnecessary jargon, don't do that. And if you explain to your grandma inter-team learning, you can easily describe it in 1 minute. Mom, people talk to each other and learn something from each other.